Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the most played champions in Challenger for every role for patch 7.13. So right now, if Challenger players are putting these champions up in their priority for this patch and they're playing them a lot, if you have good knowledge on these champions right now, then there's some of the best that you can play for 7.13. So that being said guys, let's get started. So we're going to start off in the top lane here. Now the three most picked for this patch are Gnar, Jace, and Jarvan. Now these are in order, so Gnar's the most picked, Jace second, and then Jarvan the third. So Gnar in this patch, the reason to why his play rate jumped up so much is because he did get buffs in this patch to his Q and to his E. His Q got a really good base damage increase in this patch at max rank, and it does allow him to do well in certain matchups. I still think that Gnar isn't the best blind pick though for solo queue, mainly because there's champions that exist like Aurelia, Yasuo, Riven that can all do really well against Gnar if they know how to play their champion. So I would not recommend blind picking them unless you do have really good knowledge on the champion, but in certain melee matchups and especially in tank matchups, Gnar can do very well for 7.13. And then kind of to back up my point that he's not the best in all scenarios, he only does have a 45% win rate in Challenger in this patch, so it's not like he's got some sort of a crazy win rate now after the buffs. I think the main reason to why he's being played more is because he did get buffs, so people do want to try him out, and he still isn't like the greatest pick even though he did get those buffs. And then as for Jace and Jarvan, Jace is always going to have a pretty high play rate in the higher elos, mainly because he's just a very safe pick. He can do well in almost any matchup in the top lane, and you're never really going to lose lane hard when you are playing Jace. And then for Jarvan right now, he just is very strong in this meta. Once you do get to the mid to late game, his team fighting is insane. He's got great synergy with Gargoyle's Stoneplate and the new Guardian Angel, and he also just synergizes very well with the current champions being played in the meta. Now, as for these jungle picks in this patch right now, I'm just going to briefly go over them because they're usually always the same for high elo. The jungle meta doesn't usually change too much. It's mostly just the strongest early game junglers that are always played in the higher elos. So these picks include Gragas, Lee Sin, Elise, and Kha'Zix. So I just want to talk about Gragas here because I think Gragas in this patch is very strong along with a lot of other tank junglers. Gragas with the new Righteous Glory buffs a few patches ago and also with the Cinderhulk buffs in this patch is a very good tank champion. I think that if you can play a good Gragas and you can play his early game well, just get good E flashes off in the early game and you can get good engages off, then he's one of the best solo queue junglers for sure, as long as you can play him well. Now the mid lane meta for the higher elos in this patch is changing a little bit. So right now the most picked is Taliyah, Orianna, and Corki. So Taliyah is one of the strongest shove and roam mid lane champions. She just does a really good job at level 6 at just hard pushing the wave in and then looking to influence the map with her ultimate and just with her really strong roams with her passive. So I think that she's a great champion for solo queue. She does take a little bit of time to learn for sure, but if you can play a good Taliyah, she's a very good pick in 7.13. For Orianna, she's always going to be a pretty highly picked champion. She's just a very reliant pick. She doesn't really have any hard counters in the laning phase. You can pick her into almost anything and you're going to be consistent on this champion as long as you do have some decent practice on her. And then as for Corki, Corki has been one of my most successful champions in solo queue for this season. I think he's just a really consistent pick. He's just a very safe pick in the laning phase. You don't really lose too many matchups, and he's also just got really good roams with that package. Whenever you do pick that up, the enemies just can't do anything for the duration that you have that package, because if they push out a lane or if they try to go aggressive, it takes Corki around 5 seconds to roam from mid lane to top lane or from mid lane to bot lane, and you can really influence the game by just getting one good package off. He also does scale really nicely into the mid game. His mid game power spike is probably one of the best for any mid lane champions, and he also doesn't scale too bad into the late game either. I find that once you get Trinity Force on him, Static Shiv, and also an Infinity Edge, you start to do a lot of damage in team fights, and you almost always do most damage as Corki because he's got great poke damage with his rockets, and he also just does a lot of consistent damage with his auto attacks. So the bot lane meta right now for this patch is definitely a little bit different from the last time I did one of these videos. The most picked for 7.13 are Jhin, Tristana, and Caitlyn, and Jhin is actually the most picked champion in the game overall across all roles in Challenger for 7.13. So the Jhin buffs are definitely helping him out right now in this patch. I think overall he's just one of the most fun to play AD carries, which is why a lot of people are picking him back up again. Once he did get just, even though it wasn't like the biggest buff ever, because he did get buffed and because he's now quite viable in this patch, more people are playing him. I don't think he's like super OP or anything, and I don't think he's a must pick champion for this patch, but he's definitely a lot better and he is a very good pick if you can play him well. And then for Tristana and Caitlyn being the number 2 and number 3 most picked in this patch, Tristana is a pick to where she's gotten a lot stronger, mainly due to the crit item changes. So no changes really happened to Tristana over the past few months, at least not that I know of. The only changes that happened were to those crit items, and people caught on to that and they've started to pick up Tristana again. She's even becoming like one of the most picked champions right now in the competitive scene. And then as for Caitlyn, she's still one of the most consistent just AD carry picks that you can pick into anything and do very well in this patch. Even though she did get nerfed a few patches ago, they didn't really affect her at all. She's still great right now with the double energizer build along with the infinity edge. You get 80% crit from those 3 items for the mid to late game, which just gives you an insane late game and it just allows you to do a ton of damage. I think that's another reason to why all 3 of these AD carries are strong in this patch too, because they all use the double energizer build and they also all take warlords, so you get a lot of healing out of that build and you also just get a lot of crit damage whenever your energizer attack does come off cooldown. And then right now, I think the support meta is probably the best in this patch if you are looking to carry from the support role. Right now, Blitzcrank, Thresh, and Bard are 3 of the most picked and 3 of the champions that are having great success right now in 7.13. I think with Blitz and Thresh, they're obviously very strong due to their hooks. You can easily carry a game with these champions by just getting good hooks off in the laning phase and playing them well. Once it does reach the mid to late game, just that one hook on a squishy target could end up winning your team the game. And then Bard, whenever I do play support, he's my go-to support champion. He's just a really good pick for solo queue in my opinion, because you can make so many different plays with the champion, which is I guess another reason to why he's maybe not the best pick, because it does take a while to get used to playing this champion, but if you can play him well, I think he's one of the best support picks for sure. If you take a look at any of the high elo solo queue players who main support, Bard is usually one of their most picked support champions, and they've all got like over 60% win rates on this support, whereas their other support picks, they're all around 50%, but Bard for some reason is just always over like 55 or 60% for a lot of these support mains. You could just make so many plays with the champion. He's one of the best roaming supports in the game, which allows him to influence other lanes, and he can definitely do a load of damage too, which is a part of his kit that I like a lot, because you don't really have to rely on your AD carry in the laning phase to actually do the damage. If you hit your Q, you get an auto attack off, and you also run ignite, you're gonna chunk squishy targets to around half HP with just that combo. And if your AD carry isn't a complete monkey, then you should be able to follow that up for some pretty free kills in the laning phase with Bard. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.